Okay, still on AC 3.2, the contribution of agencies to achieving social control, and looking at the various different tactics and measures that are used by agencies. This PowerPoint looks at token economy. Token economy is particularly used in the United States, very popular, not so much used in Britain anymore. We have our own system, which I shall deal with in the final slide, even though I've already mentioned that in my previous PowerPoint on the prison system. So, the Token Economy Programme, its aim is to obtain desirable behaviour in prisons, either for juvenile or for adult offenders. That's what it's all about. It's achieving social control through ensuring that we get the right types of behaviour within the prison system. So effectively, it's a form of behaviour modification. And these programs were very popular in the 1960s, and they have their roots in learning theories which were prevalent in the 1960s about changing behaviour. And the key guy that this was all linked to was B.F. Skinner. That quote there, "Give me a child and I'll shape him into anything." So Skinner and his behaviorism, he is linked to this phrase which is called operant conditioning. Now, if you're doing Psychology A Level, I'm sure you'll know quite a bit about this. I am not going to do this in massive detail. It's much more, not in terms of the theory of operant conditioning, but I'm going to see how it applies to the token economy. So basically what operant conditioning is, it's an attempt to modify behaviour through the use of positive and negative reinforcement. I'll explain what these mean in my next slide. So basically the individual makes a particular association between a behaviour and a consequence. So in my previous slide there was a picture of a rat asking for food when he presses a lever. Skinner had it so that every time rats pressed a lever in their cell they got a food pellet, and it conditioned the rat to therefore press the lever every time to get food. It's very similar to Pavlov's dogs and salivating whenever they heard a bell. You'll have done that for biology GCSE. So this illustrates it very nicely. Positive reinforcement or positive punishment, negative reinforcement, negative punishment. And you can see the definitions there, really quite straightforward. But how does this apply to the prison system? Well, basically, your token economy is a system of rewards that are set up for the desired behaviour, and sometimes with punishments to discourage behaviour that you don't want. Usually the rewards are given as tokens or points, and the idea is that you earn these tokens or points and they can be periodically exchanged for something that the individual wants, something that the prisoner desires. And the important part of these programs is the rewards have got to be a genuine reward for that person. So some token economies use, you can spend more money in commissary, so you can allow to buy more stuff each week. You might get longer, more visits from relatives. You might get a cushier job, possibly. All these things are linked to the rewards of a token economy. And so what you're doing, the desirable behaviour, such as behaving, cooperating, complying, is reinforced by the use of tokens. It's no different from how when you were a child, I'm sure your parents might have given you a star chart for being good and awarded you stickers for being good. Many parents do that. Effectively, that is operant conditioning in a small way. So obviously the tokens have no real value in themselves, and are therefore referred to Skinner as secondary reinforcers, but they can be exchanged for what Skinner called primary reinforcers, which are the things that are wanted by the prisoner, be it better shampoo, a TV in a cell, games console, more visiting rights, etc. When used in prisons, many of the programs also use negative reinforcement and punishment in order to reduce undesirable behaviour, and that's, undesirable behaviour, non-compliance, aggression, and that's when people get put in solitary confinement, that sort of thing. So there you go. I'll give you some more examples there. So you can't, your TV's removed from your cell, you get less exercise. Those are the sort of things we mean by negative reinforcement. So generalization is part of learning theory principles, and it's important when we talk about token economies, and I'll explain why. Okay, because what you're trying to do, you're trying to establish desired behavior, you're reinforcing it within the prison, within the institution, and you're trying to get it so that the prisoners, it becomes secondary nature to behave. It becomes internalized. And the idea is that when the prisoner then moves outside the institution, that behavior has been established and continues on when they are outside in society. So you have modified their behavior. So when they are released, they know how to behave. Their antisocial behavior doesn't exist anymore. So that's what we mean by generalization. A behavior learned in one situation is transferred to another, or learning of one behavior is transferred to a similar behavior. That's what we mean by generalization in this milieu. So it's important to understand the science or the study behind that. And the key study was conducted by Hobson and Holt in 1976, and it involved a study of token economies with delinquent boys. The aim of the study was to discover the effects of a token economy program on the behaviour of delinquents in cottage settings. And what we mean by cottage settings, this was conducted on 125 delinquent males in an Alabama boys' industrial school, and the boys' effective industrial school was a prison, and the boys were kept in various houses called cottages. So within the actual Alabama industrial school, you had different, for want of a better word, wings or cottages, which housed a different group of boys that all worked together individually within their cottages. So the ABIS, State Training School for Delinquent, located in an urban area, and they did the study on 5 cottage units. The age of the boys ranged from 12 to 15 years, and they've been charged with numerous offences ranging from quite minor ones such as truancy to arson and homicide. So you had the whole range of offences there. And the staff in the cottages agreed on a number of target behaviours. In other words, they were agreeing on what they wanted the boys to do, what they wanted them to be able to do at the end of this study. So the behaviours they identified were following rules in group games, completing any chores they were given, following the rules of the cottage, interacting appropriately with their peers, and they talked about line behaviour, walking in a straight line, following instructions as they were moving around the cottages and the school. Now, they collected the data in the following way. They listed the boys' names on a daily behaviour chart, and then the cottage supervisor marked each individual behavioural category. And the boys were informed the staff were taking records, and signs were posted listing the criteria for good behaviour and what they were looking for. Boys in each cottage were rated on each target behaviour by 2 staff members. Effectively, this is no different from what we do in our school, where you have a list of the ready to learn rules and the red card behaviour. They're up there on the wall to remind you of what our expectations are for the students of our school. No different really from what was happening in these cottages. So, tokens and reinforcers. Each day, the supervisor counted the tokens each boy had earned, and the boys then went to the token store weekly and exchanged their tokens for a variety of reinforcers, which were such things as drinks, sweets, games, cigarettes, etc. Or they had the opportunity of saving and banking their tokens to exchange them for more expensive reinforcers such as trips and going home. And of course, the programme was introduced to 3 cottages, and in the 4th cottage, they didn't implement the system, so they had a control. Therefore, they could compare the cottage that didn't have the token economy to see if behaviour had changed with the other 3 cottages to see how effective the programme was. And these were the results. They collected the data over 14 months, so quite a long time for this, and they found that the token economy resulted in an increase in the mean percentage of appropriate behaviours for each cottage. And in the control group, there was no noticeable improvement in behaviour. So it would appear that the token economy worked. So for instance, in cottage A, appropriate behaviour increased from a baseline of 66% to 91.6%, in B from 46 to 80.8%, and in cottage C 73 to 94. Dramatic figures, you would think. So when we evaluate, what are the strengths of this? Well, it can be administered by anyone with a bit of training. Tokens rewards are relatively cheap, so the program's not expensive, and there are more benefits than costs. And it's been found to be successful by many studies. Okay, although, and this is absolutely key, it should be noted that it's very clear from a large amount of studies on the token economy that there are in every single study approximately 10 to 20% of people that it just does not make any difference to whatsoever. There are just some people it doesn't work for, and you have to accept that. So there'll always be some criminal where they're not interested. It doesn't act as an incentive whatsoever. The negatives, okay, are that what these studies have shown is, and I think this would be true in general, is that whilst it might improve behaviour within the actual prison, institution, boys' school, etc., actually there isn't much generalization, so the behaviour doesn't seem to carry through when inmates are released. So there appears to be recidivism. So the behaviour is not ingrained, it just remains something that they do within the institution as opposed to the outside world. And another negative, programs have to be carefully planned and controlled, and there are many areas where problems can occur, such as lack of consistency from staff. So you've got one staff that does give out tokens, one that doesn't. You might have competition between the various cottages within the study, so that some staff might have been more generous with the boys in their cottage. So there are all those things that one can think about when looking at that study. But in general, what we draw from them is token economies do appear to make a difference to behaviour within institutions. There's between 10 and 20% of people that it won't make the slightest bit of difference to, no matter what you do, and it doesn't appear to transfer that much into the outside world. Now, in terms of the UK prison system, we don't really operate a token economy as such. We have what's called the incentives and earned privileges system. And this is just a slide that I've taken directly from my PowerPoint on the prison service. It's a direct replication, but just to refresh your mind. So these are awards that prisoners can earn for sticking to the rules, and in our system you have 3 levels of prisoner: basic, standard and enhanced. And if you're on basic, everyone starts originally on standard, so all prisoners start their prison sentence on standard. If they misbehave, they can be moved down to basic, and if they're on basic level, they're there for refusing to obey rules. So that would mean a loss of privilege. So that could be no TV in the cell, or meals have to be eaten in the cell. You can't associate with other people. Standard, as I said, all prisoners start on this level. Privileges might include being able to spend more of the money that they earn each week in commissary, possibly. And enhanced is for prisoners who consistently obey the rules, and they get better privileges, TVs, more visits, more gym time, that sort of thing. And here you can see a poster that a prisoner's put together insert in a prison for the enhanced options within that prison, and you can see 3 extra gym sessions, DVD evenings, options to buy games consoles and DVDs, option for super enhanced wings, quiet wings, extra library sessions, extra spends, and so on and so forth. So it's similar to a token economy, but it's called the Incentives and Earned Privileges System, IEPs. That concludes this PowerPoint on token economy. I hope you found it useful.